It's hard to believe that it's been over 5 years since Marvel's Spider-Man first swung onto PS4 and wowed us with its web-slinging action. I was a different person back then. I was dating my now wife for about a year and a half, and I was still living with my parents. It was a simpler time. As a Spider-Man fanatic since I was a child, I remember getting home from work and immediately popping the disc into my PS4. I had told my girlfriend well in advance that I would be out of commission for the weekend because I had a hot date with my PlayStation. I spent almost every waking minute of the weekend playing. I stopped countless crimes, collected a ton of backpacks, and completed almost the entire main story in those 2 days. That was okay back then, but now that I'm married, own a house, and have so many more responsibilities, I thought it would be good to revisit this classic hit from a whole new perspective. How well has it held up over time? How would my experience differ now with my limited playtime? Let's jump in and find out. First up is graphics. I won't spend too much time on this since everything that could be said has been said over the years. Even after half a decade, this game still looks great. Mind you, I'm playing the original PS4 version, not the remastered version, and it runs excellently on my PS5. Swinging through the city as Spidey is as satisfying as ever, and New York looks great. The character models also hold up well, and Spidey's movements are fluid. The only complaint I have is that the camera could go into some weird angles at times when performing finishers, and that causes you to miss some of the action. But aside from that, it looks great, and it runs at a consistent frame rate. Next up, we have game length and depth. The traversal and combat are just as fun as I remember. The combat system is a simple one that involves light attacks, heavy attacks, dodges, and of course, webbing. It's not hard to master by any means, and you'll be pulling off cool combos in no time. There are different enemy types, such as brutes, gunmen, and run-of-the-mill henchmen for you to dispatch, and Spider-Man has different gadgets and skills made especially for each. The game forces you to vary how you fight by giving each enemy type different skills. For example, brutes will require you to web them up before you attack, because they'll block all your attacks otherwise, while some enemies equipped with Mr. Negative's whips are immune to your webs, so you'll have to effectively dodge their attacks and use the environment to get the best of them. The enemy types you face will get progressively harder throughout the game's missions, but never to an overwhelming extent on Amazing Mode. Traversal is also simple but fun. You can effectively get around by just using R2 to swing through the city, but you can also use momentum, web zips, and well-timed point jumps to really gain some speed. There are also some neat interactions you can pull off, such as web zipping under a water tower, that don't really add much to the speed of what you're doing, but do look cool and add to the feeling of swinging through New York City as Spider-Man. Overall, I would say the skill ceiling isn't very high to really get moving quickly, and the skill floor is as low as it can be. The game does offer a fast travel system, but the travel is fun and satisfying enough that I've only used it a handful of times through this playthrough, even with my more limited time playing. I simply want to swing around the city because it's fun. As you progress through the game, you unlock new suits and combat abilities that can be equipped to make Peter even more formidable. There are 28 suits to unlock, each coming with their own unique abilities. The great thing here is that you can mix and match the abilities with any suit you like, so you don't need to sacrifice the way Spidey looks for a cool ability that you want to take advantage of. For the gadgets, there are a total of 8, each with 4 available upgrades that you can unlock by completing certain side quests. There are also 3 different skill trees to upgrade: Innovator, Defender, and Web Slinger, with 10 unlockables each as well, which you can prioritize however you see fit. The breadth and variety of upgrades is large, but not overwhelming, and you definitely don't need to worry about maxing these out in order to progress the story playing in Amazing Mode or below. Depending on what mode you're playing in, you may even be able to complete the main story while barely touching these, but they're rewarding to upgrade and unlock some cool abilities. There's a good mix of mission types including collectibles, stealth, combat challenges, and more. Through my first playthrough, all those years ago, I unlocked everything fairly quickly. Or so I thought. I didn't realize until I went to play it again that I spent over 50 hours exploring every nook and cranny of what this game had to offer. That was something I could quickly devour in the past, but with my shorter gaming bursts this time around, it's been a different story. I've been coming back to it for weeks, and I still have a good amount of suits, gadgets, and abilities to unlock as well. This game should easily keep you coming back for a good amount of time if you're fitting it in between household chores and date nights with your wife. That brings us to difficulty and checkpoints. Spider-Man is very forgiving and offers multiple difficulty settings for gamers of all kinds. They offer Friendly Neighborhood, which is very easy, Friendly, which is easy, Amazing, which is normal, Spectacular, which is hard, and Ultimate, which is very hard. Since I don't have as much time to game as I used to, I mostly play my games on normal to keep a good amount of challenge, but also to be able to progress in a timely manner. In my time with it so far, I haven't needed to drop down to anything lower than Amazing, and I also feel like the challenge is adequate to keep me entertained. The main story chapters can take a couple of hours each, excluding side missions, but failing halfway through rarely makes you start over from the beginning with frequent checkpoints. This overall forgiving nature should also make it easy to pause the game at any point and come back to it later without having to retrace too many steps. Boss fights are also not overly complicated, but they are fun to complete. I don't foresee any mildly experienced gamer getting stuck at any particular point, and it's easy to change the difficulty down to Friendly Neighborhood if that scenario does present itself. As far as parental controls go, the game is rated T for teen, and the recommended age group is 13 plus. It does include the comic book violence that is to be expected, and the villains that you fight as Spider-Man regularly use guns and crowbars as weapons. Blood is minimal, but could be present at times, and there is no gratuitous violence. While playing, there are missions in which you will stop drug crimes, chase runaway vehicles, and stop store robberies. One slightly darker thing I do want to mention is that there is one point in the game that deals with suicide. In this case, a character uses a pistol to shoot himself in the head. It's not overly explicit, and the character is covered while committing the act, but I feel it's worth pointing out as it's not something regularly seen in other popular superhero media like movies. With that said, I still believe that if your children watch other comic book hero content, this should be suitable for them as well. I also want to touch on life lessons. Life lessons and video games are rarely ever seen in the same sentence, but I think there are a plethora of games that teach valuable lessons, and Spider-Man is included. As I grow older and get closer to hopefully becoming a father, I've come to appreciate the lessons that can be taught to not only children, but also adults by media, such as books, movies, and television. Games should be added to that list as well. They are just as powerful as movies, and perhaps even more so, since each person is directly interacting with the action. As in other content starring this hero, Peter needs to balance his life as Spider-Man and his relationships with both people who know and don't know his secret identity. He also needs to find ways to make ends meet and maintain a job while trying to keep New York safe. The themes of the story involve responsibility, being a good partner, helping the needy, and making tough but correct decisions. As we've seen in his comics, movies, and television shows, life as Spidey isn't all rainbows and butterflies, and that also rings true for Insomniac's adaptation. Peter doesn't always get what he wants, and making difficult but necessary sacrifices is a big part of this story. Here at For Better and For Game, I don't rate games on any type of scale. Instead, I put them in one of 5 categories: Worth Late Nights, To Do Terminator, Quick Session Seal of Approval, Spouse Cosign, and Chore Accomplice. See the description below for a brief summary of each. With that said, Spider-Man is definitely worth late nights. Progressing through the story is fairly easy, especially at lower difficulties, and unlocking new abilities is rewarding without being tedious. You can also almost skip the skill trees and gadget upgrades if you're playing on Friendly Neighborhood just to experience the story and minimize playtime. $50 for the remastered version on the PlayStation Store is a bit steep for what is ultimately a 5-year-old game, but the original can be found for $20 used, and there is plenty of content here to keep a busy gamer occupied for weeks. If you somehow haven't already picked this one up, I definitely recommend it, and if you have played it before, it may still be a good idea to find some time in your busy schedule to replay it before Spider-Man 2 drops on October 20th. Thanks for watching. Do you think Spider-Man is worth squeezing into your schedule? Let me know in the comments below, and please like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this.